had this vision in my head, one that I clung to like a fool. A quiet little birthday dinner. Just him and me. Maybe candles, maybe a shared dessert we didn't finish. Nothing fancy. Just simple. Normal. I wanted one night where we remembered how we started. One night where we weren't cold or distracted or strangers playing house. I was turning 27, and I told myself that meant something. Fresh year. A new chapter. The year we'd start fixing things. Or at least stop pretending we didn't notice they were broken. I even wore the dress he liked. The one he bought me 3 years ago when he still noticed things about me. When he said I looked like spring itself. Curled my hair. Put on the perfume he once said reminded him of honeysuckle. I stood in front of the mirror for too long, adjusting the necklace he gave me the first year we were married. I didn't do it for vanity. I did it hoping he'd look at me the way he used to. The restaurant was beautiful, intimate with soft music and a golden glow in every corner. But the air between us was cold. He hadn't touched my hand once. Didn't even say, "Happy birthday," until the waiter brought it up. He kept checking his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. He laughed at something on the screen, not at anything I said. Yet, kept hoping. I kept thinking maybe he's just stressed, maybe he just needs a minute to warm up. I watched couples all around us, laughing, leaning in, lost in each other. I felt like a shadow next to him, present but unseen. Still, I didn't want to make it a fight. I had built this night in my mind for weeks. Told my friends it was a surprise dinner, that he was trying. Lied to my mom and said things were better. I believed in this dinner like it was a miracle waiting to happen. And when the waiter brought out dessert with a tiny candle, I closed my eyes to make a wish. It was so quiet between us, I could hear the candle flame flicker. I wished he'd look at me and mean it. But I didn't know he was about to blow everything out. I knew something was wrong the second we sat down, but I kept brushing it off. That's what I had learned to do in this marriage. Numb myself to the signs, ignore the tension, pretend the silence was just peace. But tonight it was too thick to ignore. The way he avoided eye contact. The way he smiled. Not at me, but through me, like a man forcing himself through a performance he didn't rehearse well enough. Like he already wanted it over. His posture said everything. Leaning slightly back, arms crossed at times, fingers drumming lightly on the table. A restless energy, like he had somewhere else to be. Somewhere more important. I told myself maybe he was nervous. Maybe he had a big surprise planned. But I knew better. I've known better for a long time. He barely touched his food. Didn't compliment mine, which he always used to do, even if he wasn't hungry. "You always order the weirdest stuff," he'd tease, but tonight he didn't even notice what I had ordered. He didn't ask how my day was, didn't ask what I wished for this year. The birthday card he gave me was blank inside. Just my name and "Happy Birthday, Mark." That was it. No love. Not even a memory. Not even a joke. And the worst part. Kept trying. I kept reaching across that invisible line between us. I asked about his work. He gave short answers. I told him something funny that happened at the coffee shop earlier, and he forced a smile, but his eyes didn't light up. They were distant, guarded. He had always been emotionally reserved, but this wasn't that. This wasn't quiet love. This was calculation, something rehearsed. And I could feel it building, like a storm behind a glass wall. Close enough to hear but not see. Every time he opened his mouth, I thought, this is it. But he'd close it again. Sip water. Look away. Until finally, he looked at me with that strange half-sad, half-done look I didn't recognize. That's when my stomach dropped. Something was coming. And it wasn't a gift. He smiled just before he spoke. But it wasn't the kind of smile you give someone you love. It was hollow. Stiff around the corners, like he'd practiced it in the mirror before walking out the door. I had seen that smile before. On doctors about to deliver bad news. On teachers who call your name just before they drop a grade you didn't expect. It was the smile of someone bracing for impact, except the impact was meant for me. I tried to return it, but my own face felt foreign. My lips twitched, but they didn't move the way they were supposed to. Because somewhere deep in my chest, something already knew. I held my breath, hoping he would just say it, that whatever this performance was building toward, he'd get it over with. Instead, he handed me a small, gift-wrapped box and said, "Happy birthday." His voice cracked just slightly at the end, like he wasn't sure if it was the right thing to say anymore. I looked at the box. I didn't reach for it right away. Felt like a test. Like this little thing between us, this square with a bow, wasn't a gift but a symbol. And when I finally opened it, I think part of me hoped it would be a sign that I was wrong. That maybe he did still know me. Still care. It was a bracelet. Generic. Still in the department store box. No engraving. No meaning. No trace of him in it. I'd never even worn bracelets. I looked up, and his smile faded slightly as he realized I noticed. Noticed how little thought went into it. How little of us was in it. "Do you like it?" he asked like he was already retreating. Said yes. Lied. Again. Like I had been lying to myself for months. That moment felt like a funeral. Like we were burying the last part of us that still believed we could be anything more than this. He didn't even say he was sorry. Didn't say he loved me. And in that silence I knew. This dinner wasn't for me. It was his goodbye wrapped in a bow. He waited until the dessert arrived. Not just any dessert. He had apparently requested it in advance. My favorite. A molten chocolate cake with raspberry drizzle, just how I used to like it. The kind I hadn't had in over a year. Back when we celebrated things. Back when he remembered the little details that made me feel seen. The candle in the center flickered gently. The waiter smiled, wished me a happy birthday, and quietly slipped away. And then silence. He didn't sing. Didn't even lift his fork. He just stared at the flame like it hypnotized him. I watched the candle burn lower and lower, waiting for him to say anything. I was about to ask if everything was okay when he suddenly inhaled sharply, straightened in his seat, and said, "I have something to tell you." 5 words. That's all it took for the room to disappear. I didn't hear the music anymore. Couldn't feel the seat under me. The flicker of the candle, the gentle clatter of other couples dining, the wine I'd barely touched. It all vanished. My skin prickled like I'd just stepped outside in the dead of winter. I blinked at him. He wasn't looking at me directly. He was looking past me like a man walking through a memory he hated. His jaw clenched, then relaxed. His hands were folded tightly, like a schoolboy confessing to a crime he didn't think was that serious. "I'm filing for divorce." It didn't even sound like him. The words were flat, final, clean. No explanation. No emotion. Not even, "I'm sorry." He said it like it was overdue. Like I should have seen it coming. And maybe I had. Maybe every late night, every sigh, every forgotten date, every excuse to sleep on the couch had been preparing me for this moment. But nothing prepares you for the moment someone throws your entire life into past tense. I stared at him. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My birthday candle was still burning. I hadn't even made a wish yet. He just ended our marriage. In the same breath people usually say, "Enjoy your dessert." I don't remember if the candle went out on its own or if I blew it out without thinking. All I know is everything stopped. The soft music that filled the restaurant just seconds earlier. The clinking of glasses, the gentle murmur of people laughing at nearby tables, even the sound of silverware cutting into plates. It all disappeared. In my mind, the world muted itself. It felt like someone had hit pause on life and left me sitting in the middle of a frozen scene. Everyone kept moving, but I wasn't part of it anymore. I was watching my own birthday unravel like an out-of-body experience. Watching a woman in a navy blue dress sit across from the man she thought was her partner, blinking slowly like she was trying to wake up. Mark didn't reach for my hand. He didn't soften his voice or try to explain. He just sat there. His eyes now fixed on the candle wax puddling onto the plate like it was the most interesting thing in the room. And for a moment I thought maybe he didn't say it. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. 'Cause who does that? Who breaks a heart during dessert? On a birthday. With no warning. But then I looked at him. Not through him, at him. And I saw it. Relief. That subtle exhale he didn't realize he let go of. That relaxing of his shoulders, like a man who had been holding a secret too long. It wasn't guilt I saw, it was liberation. Like he finally freed himself from the burden of pretending. And that's what hurt the most. He didn't hesitate. He didn't apologize. He just delivered the news and waited for the fallout, like it was a business transaction and not the end of our marriage. I looked around the room, eyes searching for something to focus on. A crack in the wall, the curve of the wine glass, anything to keep me from crying in front of him. But the tears didn't come. I wasn't sad yet. I was stunned. Hello. The kind of hurt that doesn't cry, because it doesn't even know how deep the cut went yet. And he just sat there, breathing easier than I'd seen in months. As if I was the problem he'd just solved. I think he expected me to fall apart. He kept glancing at me after he said it, almost like he was waiting for the wave to hit, for the trembling voice, the watery eyes, the quiet why. That would make him feel justified. Like if I broke, he'd feel strong. If I begged, he'd feel right. If I cried, he'd feel like a victim instead of the one doing the damage. But I didn't cry. Smiled. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because something in me clicked. Like a switch flipped. Like I suddenly remembered who I was before all this numbness took over. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't the kind of smile you give someone you love. It was a still, steady smile that said, I've been waiting for this. A smile that said, you don't get to break me because I've already seen the cracks. I reached down slowly and pulled my purse onto my lap. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might actually shake the table. But my hands, perfectly still. I unzipped it with the same calm I'd used to pull out a receipt. Except this wasn't a receipt. It was a manila envelope. Heavy. And ready. I placed it gently on the table and slid it toward him without a word. His eyes flicked from my face to the envelope, then back to my face again. And for the first time all night, he looked nervous. What's this? He asked, his voice suddenly low. I leaned in slightly and said quietly, but clearly, funny. I came here tonight to give you the same thing. And that's when he choked. Not dramatically. Not with noise. Just a subtle, sharp inhale, like he swallowed something too big for his throat. He stared at the papers like they were alive. Like they might bite. You're filing too, he asked. I didn't blink. Already did. He didn't touch the envelope. He just stared at it like it held something radioactive. And for the first time since he walked in that night, he wasn't in control. He didn't move for a long time. Just stared at the envelope like it was a ticking bomb. Like it might explode and scatter all his carefully rehearsed words across the floor. I watched the man who once promised to protect my heart now sitting there completely stunned that I had already protected myself. I repeated it slowly this time. Funny. So am I. The way his face changed in that moment. I'll never forget it. The confidence drained from him first. Then the surprise. And what replaced it wasn't anger. It was panic. You already filed, he said again, almost to himself. Yes. One word. No emotion. Just a fact. I didn't owe him anything more. He reached for the envelope now cautiously, like touching it might confirm that his story, the one where he was leaving me, had just collapsed. He opened it with slow, unsteady fingers, flipping through the first couple of pages. I watched as his eyes scanned the signature line with my name already signed and dated. 2 weeks ago. He looked up at me then, really looked. Like he was seeing me for the first time in months. You've been planning this. And I nodded. Not with cruelty. Not with pride. But with peace. Did you think I didn't notice? Yes. The distance. The late nights. The way you stopped talking to me unless it was about bills or the dog or where the spare keys were. His mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. I begged you to talk. Asked if you were okay. I tried to hold this thing together while you just disappeared from it. You just forgot I was a person. Woman. Your wife. He looked like he wanted to interrupt, but there was nothing he could say that would matter. Not anymore. So yes, I said. I filed. Before you. Because somewhere in the quiet, I realized. I don't need to wait to be left to walk away. The silence between us was deafening now. But it wasn't suffocating anymore. It was mine. You don't realize when the cracks begin. Not at first. They're small at the start. Tiny things you brush off. Missed goodnight kiss. A half-hearted love you said over a phone call instead of in person. The way he started saying I instead of we. And you tell yourself it's just a phase. That love can't stay loud forever. That marriages go through seasons. But you never expect the season to turn into a drought. You never expect to wake up beside someone and feel like a guest in your own life. 2 years. That's how long I had been disappearing quietly inside our home. I would make dinner and he'd eat it in silence, eyes locked on a screen. I'd ask about his day and get one-word answers while he scrolled through his phone. I'd suggest weekends away, date nights, therapy, anything, and he'd call it too much or say, "Things are fine, Lisa, stop being dramatic." I started counting the days between when he last held me. Then the weeks. Then the months. First, I thought I was the problem. I stared at myself in the mirror and wondered if I'd aged too quickly, gained too much weight, lost my charm. I bought new dresses, changed my hair. I even started wearing lipstick again, just to see if he'd notice. He didn't. And that's when the quiet started hurting more than the arguments ever did. Because at least when you fight, you're still in it. But silence. Silence is what happens after someone stops trying. I remember one night, I stood at the sink doing dishes while he sat behind me, scrolling. And I thought to myself, if I screamed right now, really screamed, would he even look up? That question haunted me. So I stopped screaming. I just faded. Day by day, word by word, I became a background character in the life we built. Smiling in public. Breaking in private. And he didn't even notice the shift. That's when I knew. The version of me who still believed in us was already gone. There's a special kind of heartbreak in sharing a bed with someone who no longer sees you. I used to believe the bedroom was sacred. A place where even if the world was falling apart, we still had each other. We'd talk late into the night. We'd laugh under the covers like teenagers. Some nights we wouldn't talk at all. We'd just hold hands in the dark, letting the silence feel like safety. But then something changed. He stopped reaching for me. First it was the small stuff. He stopped kissing me before bed, stopped pulling me close when I curled into him. He'd roll to his side, phone in hand, scrolling until I fell asleep. Then the space between us started to grow. Few inches at first. Then a full pillow. Then separate sides of the bed that felt like separate worlds. I remember lying there one night, facing the wall, tears rolling silently down my cheeks while he snored behind me. Peaceful, unaware. My body ached, not from any physical pain, but from the sheer weight of being unwanted. From the desperation of needing to be touched, craving to be noticed, and getting nothing but cold sheets and colder silence. I would hold my breath when he turned, hoping maybe, just maybe, he'd pull me in like he used to. But his arm would just fall across the bed, missing me completely. As if I wasn't even there. And when I couldn't take it anymore, I'd fake sleep. Lay perfectly still, eyes wide open, just so I didn't have to ask why he didn't want me. Because I knew the answer. Or at least, I feared it. I stopped buying new lingerie. Stopped trying to initiate anything. Stopped lighting candles or putting on music or pretending. Because you can't seduce someone who already left you in their mind. And the loneliest I've ever felt wasn't during a fight, or in a crowd, or even after he said he wanted a divorce. It was lying next to him in the dark, only inches apart, feeling like I didn't exist at all. There's a moment in every slow heartbreak where you stop blaming them, and start blaming yourself. Doesn't happen all at once. Creeps in quietly. You miss one joke and think maybe I'm not funny anymore. He doesn't compliment your dress, and you wonder if you've let yourself go. He forgets a date, and suddenly it's your fault for caring too much. That's where I lived. I lived in the cracks between who I was and who I thought I needed to become to keep him. I stopped wearing bright colors. He said they were too loud. I stopped talking about my dreams. He said I was unrealistic. I stopped crying in front of him. He said I was too emotional. And slowly, I started folding myself smaller and smaller, hoping I could still fit into the shrinking space he made for me. I used to be bold. I used to walk into rooms like I belonged in them. I used to laugh with my whole body and cry when things mattered because that's who I was. Alive, unfiltered. But his silence turned into a mirror I couldn't escape. Every time he dismissed me, every time he rolled his eyes, every time he chose his phone over my voice, I started wondering if maybe I was asking for too much. Was I clingy? Was I dramatic? Was I just not enough anymore? I started comparing myself to the women on his Instagram feed. Perfectly filtered, always smiling, always thinner, always something I wasn't. And I'd catch myself spiraling, pinching at my stomach, hiding my stretch marks, rehearsing conversations just to seem more easygoing. I turned every cold glance into a sign of my own failure. Because when someone you love stops choosing you, your brain tries to find reasons. And the easiest target becomes yourself. That's when I realized I hadn't just lost my husband. I'd started losing me. And yet I stayed. Because I thought if I just worked harder, dimmed myself enough, changed a little more, he'd come back. But the truth is, you can set yourself on fire trying to keep someone warm. And they'll still tell you they're cold. I still remember the exact moment I brought it up. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Him on his laptop, me with a cup of tea gone cold in my hands. I had rehearsed the words a dozen times in my head, written and deleted them in the notes app on my phone like a nervous teenager drafting a breakup text. Mark, have you ever thought about us going to therapy? He didn't even look up. He just paused his typing, exhaled like I had asked him to run a marathon and said, "What for?" That sentence still echoes sometimes when I'm alone. What for? As if there was nothing wrong. As if the silence between us didn't scream. As if the walls we'd built weren't choking both of us. I tried to explain. Gently. Carefully. I told him I was hurting. That I felt like we were drifting. That we didn't talk anymore. That I missed us. I told him therapy didn't mean we were broken. It meant I still cared enough to fight. And he laughed. Not a belly laugh. Not a kind laugh. The kind of laugh that says you're being ridiculous and I'm too tired to entertain it. He closed his laptop and said, "Lisa, not everything needs to be a drama. Relationships have ups and downs. You're just being too emotional about it." There it was again. Too emotional. That phrase used like a weapon. Like a diagnosis. As if feeling too deeply was the problem. Not the fact that the person I loved had become a ghost living in my house. I shrank in that moment. Sat back in my chair, lips pressed tight. My hands, which had reached out across the table, slowly pulled back. Not just physically but emotionally. I felt the door close. Heard the deadbolt slide into place. I never asked again. Not because I stopped needing help. But because I realized I was the only one who wanted to fix anything. And it's a soul-crushing thing to stand at the edge of a cliff, reaching out. Only to realize the person you're reaching for isn't even trying to hold on. It was a Tuesday. Not a dramatic night. Not a fight. Not even a tense moment. Just a regular, forgettable Tuesday evening. The kind where routines make everything feel normal, even if nothing really is. He had gone to take a shower and left his phone on the couch, screen still lit. Normally I wouldn't look. I've never been that kind of person. I believed that if you had to snoop, the trust was already gone. But that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the way he smiled while reading something just before he got up. Maybe it was the way he brought his phone with him everywhere now, even to take out the trash. Or maybe it was the hollow space between us I'd been drowning in for months. Whatever it was, I picked up the phone. And there it was. Not sex. Not naked photos. Just a simple message from a name I didn't recognize. "Still thinking about that joke you made in the meeting today. You always make my day brighter." With a yellow heart. Just that. But it hit harder than any affair could have. Because that message held the kind of softness he hadn't shown me in years. The kind of tenderness I begged for. The kind of attention I used to believe only I could bring out in him. He hadn't even responded flirtatiously, just a smiley face. But that was enough. Because it wasn't about the words. It was about the tone, the familiarity, the comfort. Someone else got the version of him I missed. The version who laughed, who flirted, who noticed. Someone else got his light, and I was left with the flickering leftovers. I didn't confront him. Not then. I just placed the phone back exactly where I found it and walked into the bathroom, brushing my teeth like my whole world hadn't just cracked open. I looked at my reflection and forced myself not to cry, because crying would mean I still had hope. And that message, the casualness of it, the emotional intimacy of it, that's what finally broke me. Not because it confirmed he was cheating, but because it confirmed he was gone. Emotionally, mentally. And that's when the last thread snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't throw his phone. I just looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You don't deserve this." People think silence means weakness. But what they don't understand is that sometimes silence is preparation. It's not surrender. Strategy. After that message, I didn't confront him. I didn't change my behavior. I didn't pick fights or demand answers or cry into his chest like I used to. Instead, I got quiet. Measured. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped suggesting date nights. I stopped pretending. But I didn't leave, not right away. Because I wanted my exit to be clean, undeniable, final. And I knew, deep down, I only had one chance to take back my voice. So I waited. Waited while I spoke to a lawyer in private. Waited while I moved half of my savings into a new account. Waited while I boxed up pieces of myself that had been buried in this house. Sketchbooks, old journals, clothes I loved but stopped wearing because he made a face. I waited until my birthday. Why? Because for years he had forgotten it. Or treated it like an obligation. He'd give me gift cards with no note. A rushed dinner. No candle. No care. And every year I still smiled through it. Still told people it was nice. Still held on to this stupid, crumbling fantasy that maybe, just maybe, next year he'd remember how to love me again. But this year I took my power back. I chose my birthday not out of spite, but out of symbolism. Because for once in our marriage, I wanted that day to mark my beginning, not another disappointing reminder of how forgotten I was. I wanted to leave on a day that was mine. Not when he expected it. Not in the middle of a fight. But when the table was set, the candles were lit, and he thought he still had control. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is smile, stay silent, and let the timing speak for her. So while he rehearsed his little speech, thinking he'd be the one to walk away first, I was already 10 steps ahead. Divorce papers signed. Plan made. Heart healed just enough to hand him the ending he thought was his to give. He always prided himself on being the calm one. Even when things were tense, even when I was visibly crumbling, he'd stay perfectly composed. Arms crossed, tone even. No outbursts, no trembling, just cold, collected control. And I used to think that made him strong. That his stillness meant he was grounded. But now I see it for what it was. Detachment, disinterest, distance. And yet, on that night at that table, he finally cracked. He held the divorce papers in both hands, and I watched them quiver. His fingers tried to grip the edges, but they twitched just enough to give him away. The confident man who came here to end something now sat across from the woman who already had. He wasn't in control anymore. "You already signed them?" he asked, his voice thinner now, almost raspy. He nodded. "Only 2 weeks ago." His eyes scanned the signatures again, like he was trying to wake up from a dream. As if he could find something there that would tell him this wasn't real. But it was. Every page spelled out the truth. I was no longer afraid of letting go. I didn't think. He started but stopped himself. He didn't think I'd be strong enough. He didn't think I'd be done. That's the part that rattled him. Because he thought he'd be the one walking away clean. He thought he'd say the words, leave the table, and never look back while I collapsed in tears. He expected shock, not preparation. He expected heartbreak, not closure. He expected power. But I sat there, chin lifted, breathing steady. My hands folded gently in my lap. No tears. No begging. No questions. Just a woman who'd already mourned. Already buried the marriage. Already rebuilt enough of herself to say goodbye with grace. And as he tried to speak, tried to gather the right words, I watched him shrink. Not physically but emotionally. The man who once loomed so large in my life was suddenly small, confused, unmoored, human. His hand shook. Mine didn't. Because grief doesn't make you weak. Sometimes it makes you sharper, quieter, more precise. And in that moment I realized. He was just a man who thought he could leave me broken. But I had already walked out of the fire. The check came and neither of us moved. It sat in the center of the table like the last tether between us. For a second I thought he might reach for it. Offer to cover it, say something polite. Anything to smooth the sharp edge of what had just unfolded. But he didn't. So I reached into my purse, slid out my card, and paid for my own birthday dinner. Because that's what it had become. My evening. My closure. My freedom. The waiter returned with a gentle smile, oblivious to the emotional battlefield he was clearing plates from. I signed the receipt with steady hands and tucked my copy into my bag. Then I stood up, slowly, deliberately. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. Didn't ask if he needed a ride home. Because this wasn't about drama. It wasn't about revenge. It was about release. The night air hit my face the moment I stepped outside. It was cooler than I expected, and for a brief second, I felt the sting of tears. Not because I regretted anything, but because endings, even the right ones, still carry weight. But instead of collapsing into sadness, I let the wind carry something out of me. The years I spent shrinking. The version of me that waited, begged, broke, and stayed. I walked to my car with my heels clicking against the pavement like punctuation marks. Not an escape. Declaration. He wanted to end things on my birthday. But I ended them on my terms. And as I slid into the driver's seat, took one last breath, and started the engine, I didn't feel broken. Felt whole. Because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do isn't leaving with a bang. It's walking away quietly, completely, and without needing them to understand why. And for the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel like someone's wife. Felt like myself again.